How a poor maid who was thrown out of the house met a billionaire that changed her life. Naomi had never known what it felt like to belong. Life had always dealt her blows too heavy for her fragile shoulders. Yet somehow she kept moving, her spirit refusing to break. An orphan since the age of 7, she grew up under the charity of strangers, people who gave her scraps of food, old clothes, or a place to rest for the night, but never the warmth of a true family. By the time she turned 16, she had already learned that survival was not a matter of choice, but necessity. The laundry shop had been her safe haven, a cramped, modest place that smelled of soap, starch and sweat. It was the only home she had. The owner, Mr. Bala, wasn't exactly kind, but he allowed her to sleep on a small mat in the corner of the shop. For Naomi, that mat meant more than just a bed. It was security, her only shield against the cruelty of the streets. Every night she would curl up with her single wrapper and whisper a prayer of gratitude. At least I have somewhere to stay. At least I am not outside in the cold. Her mornings were always the same. She would wake up before dawn, sweep the dusty floors, fetch water, and prepare herself for long hours of washing and ironing clothes that belonged to people who barely knew her name. She worked quietly, blending into the background, unnoticed and unseen. Her whole world consisted of basins of soapy water, piles of clothes, the hiss of the pressing iron, and her whispered conversations with God. But on that fateful morning, everything changed. Naomi was sitting on her mat, her small bowl of gari soaked in water balanced on her lap. It wasn't much, but it filled her empty stomach just enough to give her strength. Her boss had just unlocked the front door, letting the first golden rays of sunlight filter into the shop. The air outside was cool and fresh, carrying the hum of a new day in the small town. Naomi hurried to rinse her face with a tin cup of water, so she would be ready to start work. Just as she stepped through the doorway, she collided with someone. Cold water splashed across a bright yellow lace dress. Naomi froze, her heart slamming against her chest. "Hey, are you blind?" the woman snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice through the morning air. Naomi's eyes widened. The woman was elegant, her makeup flawless, her jewelry glittering in the sunlight. And now the expensive lace she wore clung damply to her body. Naomi's hands trembled. "Ah, sorry, Ma. Please forgive me. I didn't see you. Let me clean it," Naomi stammered, reaching out. "Don't touch me," the woman barked, jerking away as if Naomi's fingers carried disease. "Do you know how expensive this dress is? You dirty girl. You ruined it." Naomi bowed her head quickly, her voice breaking. "Please, Ma, it was a mistake. I beg you." But the woman wasn't listening. She pushed past Naomi, storming into the small office where Mr. Bala sat. Naomi could hear her furious voice through the thin wooden walls. "Fire her. If this is the kind of person you employ, I'm done with your shop. I can't deal with such carelessness." Naomi's knees weakened. Tears stung her eyes. She wanted to run inside, to fall on her knees and plead, but her legs refused to move. A moment later, her boss stepped out, his face heavy with resignation. He wouldn't even look her in the eye. "Naomi," he said softly, his voice laced with guilt. "Please, sir, I didn't mean—" She started, but he raised a hand. "You've been a good worker, but I can't afford to lose a customer like her. I'm sorry, Naomi. You have to leave." The words stabbed into her chest. She dropped to her knees, clutching the hem of his trousers. "Sir, please, don't do this to me. I have nowhere else to go. This is where I live, where I eat. Please, sir, I beg you." Mr. Bala looked down at her, his eyes clouded with pity. But still, he shook his head. "My hands are tied. I can't help you." From the doorway, the well-dressed woman smirked, satisfied. "That will teach you to watch where you're going," she said, before striding away. Naomi crumbled to the ground, sobbing. The small shop, that had been her world, her home, had just been ripped away from her. That evening, she gathered the few belongings. She owned 2 old dresses, a wrapper, and a worn pair of slippers into a small bag. She looked around the shop one last time, her heart breaking. For 2 years, she had lived here. Now she was nothing but a girl, with no roof over her head and no idea where to go. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Naomi walked aimlessly through the streets. People bustled around her, too busy with their own lives to notice the girl wiping tears from her cheeks. The lamps flickered on one by one, and the air grew colder. By the time night fully arrived, her feet were aching, and her body trembled from exhaustion. That was when she saw it, a half-built structure at the edge of town. An uncompleted building, its walls high, but its windows and doors still gaping open. She slipped inside, her heart pounding in fear, but it was better than the open street. She placed her bag on the cement floor and curled up against the wall, whispering, "God, please help me. Don't let me die here." The night was long. Cold wind swept through the gaps in the building, chilling her to the bone. She didn't sleep. Every sound, the bark of a dog, the creak of the night air, made her heart race. She hugged her knees to her chest and tried to stay strong. At dawn, voices startled her awake. A group of men in helmets and safety boots entered the building, their tools clanging loudly. They froze when they saw her. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" one of them asked, his tone firm but not unkind. Naomi scrambled to her feet, her hands shaking. "Please, sir, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to trespass. I lost my job. I have nowhere to go. I'll work. I'll do anything. Please, let me stay." The men exchanged glances, some frowning, others shaking their heads. "This is not a job for women," one muttered. "We carry blocks, mix cement, hard work." Naomi lifted her chin, determination burning in her eyes. "I can do it. I am strong. Please, just give me a chance." The workers hesitated. Finally, one said, "Wait for the boss. He'll be here soon. If he agrees, you can stay." Naomi nodded quickly, her heart pounding with fragile hope. She sat quietly in the corner, watching as the men worked. Sweat glistened on their brows, the sound of hammers and cement mixing filling the air. An hour later, the boss arrived. A tall man in a white shirt and safety boots, his face stern, his presence commanding. The workers explained Naomi's situation. He studied her silently, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. "So, you want to work here?" he asked, his voice deep. "Yes, sir," Naomi replied, standing straight. "I have no place to go. I need to survive. I will do my best." He raised an eyebrow. "This is not a place for games. If you cannot handle it, you'll leave immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir, I understand." He stared at her for a long moment before nodding. "Fine. You start tomorrow." Naomi's face lit up. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." That night, for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, life was giving her a second chance. But she had no idea that her path was about to cross with someone who would change her destiny forever. A man whose wealth and power stretched far beyond her imagination, yet whose heart would soon find its match in the most unlikely place. The morning sun rose harsh and bright, casting golden streaks over the skeleton of the building. Naomi stood timidly at the edge of the site, her thin frame swallowed by an oversized blouse and skirt that had seen better days. She had barely slept through the night, the cold wind in the uncompleted building biting into her skin, but her spirit burned with determination. Today was her first real day as a labourer. Today, she would prove she belonged here. The workers glanced at her with mixed expressions, some amused, some sceptical, others openly dismissive. A girl among them was unusual, almost laughable. They were men hardened by years of carrying cement blocks, bending iron rods, and sweating under the unforgiving sun. They could not imagine that this fragile-looking maid could survive even an hour of their work. "Now, one of them muttered under his breath, shaking his head. "See this one? She go faint before midday." Another chuckled. "I give her 1 hour. After that, she go run." Naomi heard them, but she refused to flinch. She tightened the knot of her wrapper and waited for instructions. The site supervisor, the same stern man who had allowed her to stay yesterday, approached her with a wheelbarrow and pointed toward a pile of sand. "Fill it, take it to the other side, and hurry," he said flatly. Naomi looked at the pile. It was huge, a mountain of coarse sand glistening under the sun. Her heart thudded in her chest, but she forced herself forward. She picked up the shovel. It was heavier than she expected, but she dug it into the sand and began filling the wheelbarrow. The first few scoops made her arms ache, her palms already beginning to blister. She bit her lip and pushed through the pain. Sweat poured down her face, soaking her blouse. By the time the wheelbarrow was full, her breath came in sharp gasps. She gripped the handles, pushed with all her might, and staggered toward the other side of the site. The men watched with mocking grins, expecting her to drop it. But Naomi, trembling and drenched in sweat, reached the other side and emptied the sand. Then she turned back for more. By noon, her hands were raw, her back screamed in protest, and her legs wobbled with exhaustion. Yet she refused to stop. Every time her body begged her to rest, she remembered the cold, hungry nights she had endured. She remembered, as the sun blazed overhead, Naomi returned from fetching water. She wiped her brow and bent to pick up a trowel. That was when the stack of blocks shifted with a sharp, grinding sound. The men shouted, "Look out!" Naomi froze, eyes wide. The blocks tumbled forward, crashing down like thunder. She stumbled backward, her foot catching on a stone. In an instant, she fell directly into the path of the falling cement. But a strong hand grabbed her arm. Mr. Francis. He had been inspecting the far wall when he saw the danger. Without hesitation, he dashed forward, pulling Naomi out of the way just as the blocks slammed into the ground, sending dust and shards flying. The workers gasped. Naomi trembled, pressed against Francis's chest, her breath ragged. "Are you hurt?" His voice was urgent now, his steady composure shaken. "No, sir," she whispered, her body quaking. Francis's jaw tightened as he looked at the pile of broken blocks. Then his eyes swept over the workers, sharp and accusing. "Who left this like this?" Silence. No one dared speak. Naomi slowly pulled away, still trembling. Her knees were weak, but she forced herself to stand. She did not miss the way. Chinny, standing at the edge of the crowd, quickly averted her gaze. Francis exhaled slowly, then turned back to Naomi. "Be careful, and if anything like this happens again, you come straight to me. Understood?" She nodded faintly, still stunned. As Francis walked back toward his SUV, the whispers rose again. But this time, they were louder, filled with awe and curiosity. The ogre saved her with his own hando. "Nawa, who this girl be Seth?" Naomi sat down slowly, her hands still shaking. Her heart thundered in her chest, not only from fear, but from the strange, protective warmth she had felt in Francis's arms. That night, as she lay on her thin mat in the corner of the uncompleted building, she could not sleep. The scene replayed over and over in her mind, the falling blocks, the billionaire's strong grip, his steady voice asking if she was all right. But while Naomi wrestled with confusion, Chinny seethed. Her plan had not only failed, it had backfired. Instead of disgrace, Naomi had earned even more of Francis's attention. "No," Chinny muttered in the darkness. "This girl will not win. I swear it." And somewhere deep inside, Naomi knew that this was only the beginning. Because while Francis had saved her once, the battles ahead would test her in ways she had never imagined. The construction site had become Naomi's battlefield and her sanctuary. Every day she woke before dawn, her body aching yet her spirit unbroken. With each bucket of water, each brick she laid, she told herself she was building more than walls, she was building her future. The men who once mocked her now watched with a strange respect. She did not complain, she did not falter, and when she smiled even faintly, it softened the sharpest hearts. But it was the presence of Mr. Francis that truly shifted everything. He no longer watched her from afar. Sometimes he asked about her work. Sometimes he made sure she was given food or a place to rest. They were small gestures, but to Naomi, who had been treated as invisible for so long, they felt monumental. One afternoon, when the sun burned hottest, Francis arrived again. Naomi had just finished hauling water, her blouse damp with sweat. She nearly stumbled under the weight, but before she could fall, a firm hand steadied the bucket. She turned and found him standing there. "You'll wear yourself out," Francis said quietly. Naomi's eyes widened. "I'm fine, sir." His gaze lingered on her tired face. Even warriors need rest. Before she could reply, he carried the bucket himself, setting it down beside the workers as if it weighed nothing. The men exchanged stunned looks. Never had they seen the billionaire lift anything on this site. Francis turned back to Naomi, a faint glimmer of amusement in his eyes. "Next time, ask for help." She nodded shyly, her cheeks hot. As he walked away, she felt something stir within her, something both frightening and beautiful. But not everyone saw beauty in this growing bond. From the shadows, Chinny watched with fury. Her hands clenched into fists. How dare he? How dare he notice her, protect her, care for her? For weeks, Chinny had tried to remind Francis of her loyalty, her competence, her place at his side. She had dressed finer, spoken sweeter, even intercepted him with files and reports. Yet his eyes wandered to the maid who had once been beneath her notice. Envy gnawed at her until it became venom. And so, Chinny plotted again. This time, she would not settle for humiliation. She would destroy Naomi completely. The opportunity came on a sweltering Friday. Supplies were running low, and the foreman sent Naomi into the storage shed to fetch tools. Chinny slipped in after her, her steps silent. Naomi was kneeling, rummaging through a box, when Chinny's voice cut through the still air. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Naomi froze. She turned slowly. Chinny stood in the doorway, her eyes blazing. I don't understand," Naomi stammered. "Don't play innocent with me," Chinny snapped. "I've seen the way he looks at you. But listen to me, Naomi. You will never be more than a maid. Do you hear me? Never." Naomi's lips trembled. "I'm just working. I never—" "Liar," Chinny's voice rose. "You think you can steal what's mine? You think you can climb from the gutter and touch the stars? Not while I live." Before Naomi could respond, Chinny shoved her hard. Naomi stumbled back, crashing into the box of tools. The sharp edge of a hammer grazed her arm, drawing blood. Naomi gasped in pain. "Why are you doing this?" "Because girls like you need to remember your place," Chinny hissed. "And I will make sure Francis sees you for the dirt you are." Then she stormed out, leaving Naomi shaking in the dark shed. That evening, Francis returned for an inspection. To Naomi's shock, Chinny approached him with tears streaming down her face. "Sir," she cried, I don't know how to tell you this. It's about Naomi." Francis frowned. "What about her?" Chinny lowered her gaze, her voice breaking. She tried to attack me in the storage room. She said she would take everything I have, that she would ruin me. Look! She pulled back her sleeve, revealing faint scratches on her arm. Scratches she had made herself earlier. Gasps spread among the workers. All eyes turned to Naomi, who stood frozen in disbelief. That's not true, she cried. She attacked me. I didn't touch her. But the men were unsure. Chinny's tears were convincing. And Naomi, tired, dirty, with blood still staining her sleeve, looked guilty in their eyes. Francis's expression was unreadable. His gaze flickered between the two women, his silence heavy as a storm cloud. Naomi's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to beg him to believe her, but the weight of shame crushed her voice. That night, alone on her mat, Naomi wept. For the first time since coming to the site, she wondered if she should leave. Perhaps Chinny was right. Perhaps she was foolish to think she could build a new life here. She closed her eyes, the memory of Francis's silence cutting deeper than Chinny's shove. If he believed the lie, if he saw her as nothing but a troublemaker, then everything she had fought for would be lost. But just as despair consumed her, a thought flickered. She remembered the way Francis had saved her from the falling blocks, the way he had carried her bucket, the way his eyes softened, if only for a moment, when he spoke to her. And for the first time, Naomi whispered into the darkness, "No, I will not give up. Not yet." Still, doubt lingered. And as the moon rose over the silent site, she knew tomorrow would decide everything. Because Francis would have to choose whether to believe Chinny's lies or Naomi's truth. And that choice would change her life forever. The morning sun rose heavy and unforgiving, casting long shadows over the construction site. Naomi sat quietly by the water barrels, her arm bandaged from the cut she had received in the storage shed. Her eyes were swollen from the night's tears, but her resolve fragile as it was held firm. The workers' whispers pricked her ears like thorns. "That's the girl Chinny said attacked her. Doesn't look like the type, but you never know." Francis seemed troubled. If the boss turns against her, she's finished. Naomi bowed her head, clutching the fabric of her worn skirt. She had endured humiliation before, when her employers discarded her like trash, when the world mocked her poverty, but something about this new wound cut deeper. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about being seen, believed, valued. And the one man whose belief mattered most had remained silent. Meanwhile, Francis sat in his air-conditioned car, parked just beyond the site. His driver waited, puzzled, as the billionaire stared at nothing in particular. "Sir?" the driver asked carefully. "Should we head back to the office?" Francis didn't answer. His mind replayed the scene from the day before. Chinny's trembling lips, her tears, her scratches, and Naomi standing stunned, bloodied, yet defiant. Something didn't add up. He had built his empire by seeing through deception. Contracts, competitors, governments. He had faced lies in every form. And instinct told him Chinny's story carried cracks. Francis tapped the steering wheel, then finally spoke. "Stay here." He stepped out and walked toward the storage shed. Inside, dust motes floated in the thin shafts of light. Tools lay scattered across the floor where Naomi had fallen. He crouched, studying them carefully. A faint streak of blood marked the edge of a hammer. Nearby, drag marks on the dusty floor suggested a struggle. Francis's jaw tightened. He traced the scratches on the wooden wall with his fingertips. They were two. The storm broke days later. Chinny, emboldened by her hatred, confronted Naomi in the half-lit corridor of the site offices. "You think you've won, don't you?" Chinny hissed, her face twisted with venom. "That because Francis pities you, you've taken my place?" Let me tell you, girl, you'll never be more than the maid who was thrown away like trash. Naomi flinched but held her ground. I never wanted your place. I only wanted to live with dignity. Dignity? Chinny laughed bitterly. You think dignity will keep you safe. Men like Francis don't love women like you. They use you, then discard you. And when he's done, I'll still be standing. Naomi's hands shook, but her voice remained steady. If that is true, then why do you fear me so much? Chinny's eyes blazed. For a moment, she looked ready to strike Naomi, but before she could, Francis's voice thundered from the doorway. Enough. Both women turned. Francis stood there, his expression darker than storm clouds. Chinny, he said coldly, I know what you've done. The lies, the schemes, the accident with the beams. It ends tonight. Chinny paled. Francis, you can't possibly believe. I believe the evidence. And more importantly, I believe Naomi. His gaze softened as it shifted to the trembling maid. She has been nothing but honest and strong, while you have tried to destroy her at every turn. Naomi's breath caught. Did he just say he believed her? Francis stepped closer, his voice unyielding. You will leave this site and my life. If you ever return to harm Naomi again, I will see that you face the law. Chinny's mask cracked. Tears of rage welled in her eyes. So it's true, she spat. You've fallen for her. A nobody. A maid. Francis didn't flinch. She is worth more than every fortune I've built, because she has what money can never buy: integrity. The silence that followed was deafening. Workers had gathered, unseen, in the hallways, listening. Chinny realized she had lost not just Francis, but her pride, her power, her hold. With a scream of frustration, she shoved past them and fled into the night. When the echoes of her footsteps faded, Naomi turned to Francis, trembling. Why would you defend me so strongly? She whispered. Francis stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. For once, he allowed himself to drop the walls he had built around his heart. Because I cannot imagine a world without you in it, he said simply. You've changed me, Naomi. You've reminded me what it means to care, to trust, to love. Naomi gasped, her hands flying to her lips. Francis reached for her hand, holding it firmly. I know your past has been filled with pain, but I promise you this, if you will allow me, I will build a future where you never have to doubt your worth again. Tears spilled freely down Naomi's cheeks. She had dreamed of being valued, of being loved, but never truly believed it possible. Yet here stood the man who had every reason to overlook her, choosing her instead. Her voice shook, but her answer was clear. Yes, Francis, I believe you. The days that followed marked the beginning of a new chapter. Chinny disappeared from their lives, her name spoken only in whispers. Naomi, once the discarded maid, now walked with quiet strength beside a man who saw her, not as a servant, but as his equal. Francis kept his promise. He ensured she was safe, respected, and most of all loved. And though the scars of her past would never fully fade, Naomi discovered something greater than survival. She had found a place, a purpose, and a love that turned her pain into power. The world had cast her out. But fate, in its strange and wondrous way, had led her into the arms of the one who would change her life forever.